Okay, three, two, one, let's go. Yo, this is Caroline, and I'm doing actually my third episode of my podcast. I started this podcast a couple weeks ago, and it's really just kind of like a little bit of an experiment, just having fun with it and stuff like that. But I tell you, I really think that there is something to be said about the sort of talk radio doesn't really exist anymore, but there was a reason why people sat and listened to talk radio. Sorry, sipping my coffee. And I think the difference between talk radio and okay, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I think that when you do a podcast and you don't actually have like visual aids in the podcast, it's just a straight recording, voice. This reminds me of something Vin Scully said, a famous broadcaster a long time ago. He said the difference between calling a sports game on television versus a sports game on radio is that on television, you're just going along with the action. On radio, it's sort of the same as if someone said, "Hey, look, this is the land you see in front of you. This is the landscape. Here's a canvas. Paint a picture of it." And he said that it's basically like I'm trying to paint the best picture possible of this landscape to give you exactly what it is, and this is the best I could actually do, which I always find kind of interesting because it's like I think at the end of the day, yeah, the visual aids help, stuff like that. And honestly, as I continue doing these podcasts, I might actually start incorporating visual aids to what I'm talking about. Like if I make an example, I'll just use YouTube to add in some footage of exactly what I'm talking about, and that really helps. But for now, it's just going to be like old school radio, and I'm going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. It's funny too because so many people have asked me, "Oh, what do you talk about in your podcast?" And I think I mentioned this on the last episode. But it's like I talk about life. You know what I mean? And it's like uh, whatever's going on, it doesn't matter. I mean, when you have a sort of a program like this, if you will, and you're like me, and you're just kind of figuring this thing out and giving it a shot, and just assuming people are going to listen to your stuff. For me, I personally just talk, and like I'm just like a regular person sitting in front of the mic and talking. That's all I'm doing. So for me, especially at this point in the infancy of this thing, I would actually like to be a little bit more general instead of being on a specific topic because being kind of general in the infancy of a podcast like this, you could really find out what the listeners really want to hear about. And I also don't think it's bad to change it up from time to time. I mean, look, this is I'm not comparing myself to Joe Rogan, but I mean, it's not like Joe Rogan has every podcast and it's like we talk about this specific thing. Yeah, somebody on there and he talks about anything. I watched an episode of Joe Rogan the other day and he had Howie Mandel on there, and they were talking about it. To me, it was almost like they were just having a conversation about their lives, and that's all it really was. Excuse me. And it's like, well, okay, so I mean, it doesn't have to be some specific thing, but I mean, there's some podcasts that talk about conspiracy theories. Some talk about I don't know relationships. Some that whatever the case is. And I think ultimately, that's all well and good after you get like following and stuff like that. But for now, why not just be a jack of all trades? I know there's a saying: a jack of all trades is a master of none. But you don't start out as a master of anything. You know what I mean? So I mean that's just the way I'm going to put it. I'm like, hey, yeah, you're right. A jack of all trades is a master of none. I mean, like let's think about it for a second. You go to school, right? And you don't just learn one topic. You're not born and then in the fourth grade they're like, okay, you're going to be an electrician. You're going to be the best electrician ever. And then you just go to school from age 3 or whatever through K through 12, being an electrician, and then you go to college or trade school and be get your certification and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, some people do that to some extent. I mean, like, what are athletes? I mean, they're bred to be athletes for crying out loud. Most athletes have been doing this since they were 5 years old, and the truth about a lot of them too is that a lot of athletes, they never really made a conscious decision to be what they are. They were just kind of like yeah, there are a lot of people out there that wanted to be ball players or whatever since they were 5 or whatever, and they grew up and they played in school and stuff like that. But I think generally speaking, most athletes, I mean, you just get them out there and go. I mean, because you can't make these decisions when you're 3. You know what I mean? That's why just because, Tom Brady was playing baseball and football when he was a little kid and all this stuff, if he had his choice, he would just be screwing around and not dedicated to anything like that. Um, but I mean, then again, what do I know? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's a million athletes out there that can be like, well, no, it's not true. That's all I ever wanted to do. Like, well, yeah, since I was 3 years old, but when you were 3 years old, there was the bottle and the diapers and like your if all you wanted to do since you were 3 is be a baseball player, then there was, yeah, like I said, the bottle, the diapers, and then you graduated from that to food and the toilet, and now you want to be a major league baseball player. You know what I mean? It's like that's why I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't go that far and saying like, yeah, I really think that in order for someone to grow up and be an athlete, professional athlete, making millions of dollars, I mean, they had to have been, put through a lot of stuff when they were kids. Like, no, you're going to go to practice, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You know what I mean? All these things. Again, like I said, this is just me sort of speculating. I don't know for sure. You know what I mean? I don't know any of these people's lives. But anyway, that's another thing too. That's how I start my podcast. I don't want to dive right into the topic right away. I just really want to like start talking and be like, okay, this is what I think, blah blah blah, this and that. Sometimes there are some days where I've started these and I'm like, I wanted to talk about something completely different right off the bat. What I wrote down on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? Like I was like, nah, dude, I want to talk about this. But then I was like, nah, you know what? Let me just go into this and get into the subject. You know what I mean? But one thing I do want to kind of mention before I get into the topic I actually want to get into is I really think that we live in a time where young people, people in their 20s and stuff like that, um, they, man, I hate to bring up Andrew Tate again, but sometimes I really feel like they are living sort of in the Matrix or some form of Matrix. Maybe the Matrix isn't an actual literal Matrix, but maybe you're always under some form of Matrix of somebody. You know what I mean, or someone. Mm. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of different examples of what I think about this, but well, you know what? Like it's just really crazy to me sometimes how. Okay, I'll give you an example. This is a minor example. I got better ones, but I'm gonna give you a small example because I don't want to get into this too much. Let's just say you have a sister and she's being beaten by her husband, and then you finally just get the courage and you say, yo, no, this guy's beating you. This guy's this. You can't be with this guy, sister, or like a friend, something like that. You know what I mean? And that person flips out on you and calls you all these things and says all these horrible things to you. You're manipulative, this, and that. The funny thing is, and I've learned this at this point in my life, there are people out there that are under the control of somebody else, basically, and they don't want to face it. So they look for the easiest person that they can take all their frustrations. Like again, that sister of yours or that best friend or whatever, that she's getting beaten by the husband, and you tell her, hey, this is happening, and like that's not good, and she just flips out on you. You know what I mean? It's because she wants to flip out on that person, but she can't. She's afraid of that person, and it's crazy how it works. Like, and I think right now, young people in their 20s are suffering from this from more than anybody. I mean, I know this sort of thing has been happening for centuries, but what I'm trying to say is that I really truly believe we're living in a time where it's like I can't flip out on the person I want to flip out on, so I'm going to flip out on you. I'm going to make you the bad guy. And then when I make you the bad guy, oh, my life feels so much better. Oh my God, it's finally over. I mean, like again, I use this example: the sister getting beaten by the husband, and then the brother saying, "Yo, what the hell is this? Like, you got to get out of this." And then her deleting him from her life. Oh, you're just a horrible, manipulative brother that can't accept the man I'm with that I love, and blah blah blah. And then you're like, wait, what the hell's going on? And then it's like, oh, I'm going to erase you and the family or whatever from my life, and you're going to be gone. It's really crazy how I feel like this is a time where there's a lot of this going on, where it's like, I'm living a miserable life, and this person in my life is making me miserable, and I'm going to blame you instead because I cannot blame the person that's making me miserable. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, ultimately, the person that you really should blame is yourself because you're the one that's putting yourself through that. Um, and it's really crazy how it's such a standard behavior in this day and age where it's like, yo, so this person is making me miserable, but I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to manifest all that misery and throw it onto somebody else. And it's so crazy how that person will be like, oh God, I'm so relieved. You are out of my life. Now my life can proceed. Now it can continue. And it will not be something that just goes away, and it'll be something that that battered wife will hold on to. Thank God my brother's out of my life. Oh my God, my brother's out of my life. It's finally over. Oh my God, now me and my husband can be happy. He's always hated my husband and put him down and blah blah blah. Boom, she gets punched again, and it's like, what do I do? But it's like I'm so scared to do anything else or be away from this person that I'm just gonna sit here and take it forever and ever and ever and ever. And again, this isn't the topic I want to get into, but I just thought this would be a really interesting thing to talk about and then kind of get out there. Kind of say, hey, and then maybe like, see, for topics like that, I'd rather just be like, let me make this the episode I'm talking about and then go from there. But anyway, that's just the intro. So if you find that interesting, ask me next week. Say, hey, talk about that instead. I'm going to change gears and go into is conspiracy theories. I've always been into conspiracy theories, like not so much conspiracy theories per se, but the weird stuff that's happened throughout history, and you kind of like okay, like the Kennedy assassination, TWA flight 800, 800, yeah, 800, crash, the 9/11, stuff like that, stuff that you watch from so many angles, you've seen, you've studied, you whatever, and you just cannot figure this stuff out. And one thing that I've really gotten into lately, and before I say this, I'm not saying I believe this, okay? I'm not saying that at all. But the flat Earth theory. I've been watching this guy. His name is Eric Dubay, I believe. And this guy is fascinating, man. It's so funny because I think we're starting to get to a point in our society, I think where most people believe that the moon landing was fake and it never happened and it was done in a studio. I mean, even Family Guy made jokes about that and stuff like that. But prior to, say, the turn of the century, it was very common to be like, yeah, they landed on the moon and that's that. And I remember when I was a kid, I remember asking, I think it was the assistant principal or something at my school. I was just in third grade or something. I said, hey, how come we haven't gone to the moon again? I want to see them go to the moon. Oh, it cost so much money, and going to the moon once was all that really mattered. Which, if you remember, that was the sort of the one of the plot points of that movie Apollo 13. That nobody really cared. They've already been to the moon. It's routine. And I'm like, I don't, and then even Bill Paxton's character said, nothing routine about going to the moon. You know what I mean? And it's true. And it's so funny because the more I think about the moon landing being fake, the more I kind of starting to question what I've been taught my whole life. Because if the moon landing was fake, then what else is fake? You know what I mean? What else didn't actually happen? And the rug was pulled over on us or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just it really blows my mind how much stuff out there isn't real, or at least it looks like it's not real, and then boom. Take 9/11 for example. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that claim that it was a controlled demolition, it was a controlled demolition, it was a controlled demolition. I don't buy that, and I'll tell you exactly why. Now, Tower 7 being destroyed, you got a point there. And this first things first. And this would be a great time for visual aids to come into place. Usually when a tower is destroyed with a controlled demolition, what it does is after the initial explosions, the tower just completely devours itself into the ground. Like gravity takes over, and every piece of that building just like what's the best way to describe it? Like if you had like a trick sword, and it looks like a blade, but when you push it into the wall, it sort of compresses on itself, and then it becomes smaller or whatever. Like the guys that swallowed swords, that's basically what it would do. Is it would just go in. He would use his teeth or something to make the sword smaller, or the back of his jaw. I forget how it exactly went. You can look up the magician's tricks and stuff like that. So that's essentially what a building does when it is demolished that way, on a controlled demolition. It just, the explosion happens, gravity takes over, or light, or its weight takes over for the flat Earth people. We'll get to that in a minute, and it goes in like it collapses into the ground. Now, the North and South Tower during 9/11 didn't collapse like that. Neither one of them did. As a matter of fact, the North and South Tower both collapsed at impact point. Now, you always see this, and I saw this on Twitter today. What did it say? Jet fuel doesn't get hot enough to melt steel. But again, that was debunked, because it's like, look, it doesn't need to get hot enough to melt steel. It just needs to weaken it. And the World Trade Center, both towers were made of concrete reinforced trusses. Trusses, if they're heated up enough, they'll just completely collapse. That's why they say in the fire department, never trust a truss. A truss is like kind of like if you ever go to I don't know, like a sporting arena or something like that, or a concert, and you see these like big they're like metal contraptions, and they look like little like what are they like? I wish, see, again, visual aids would be really good here, but like the stuff that holds the lights up on the ceiling of like a concert arena or something like that, you'll see them, and that's essentially what they are. And again, you could put fireproofing on them, cool, but if a plane slams into the building, it's going to knock all that fireproofing right off of that truss, and all you got to do is just heat up one of them. One piece of it is what I mean. Well, one piece of that truss. And if the entire building weighs what it does, especially with all the concrete, and the roof weighed more than 10 floors. So if you look at the way the South Tower collapsed, it just completely lost its strength on the gaping hole that was in the building. And and I'll get back to Flat Earth in a minute, but the towers collapse at impact point. If you watch both videos, which, by the way, a lot of these videos are starting to disappear from the internet. In the middle 2000s, I used to watch 9/11 footage till the cows come home, but now I don't really see as much as I used to. The South Tower like cut right in half, right at impact point, and then just completely collapsed on itself. And then you say, well, why did the top part just fall over and then the rest of the building was staying standing? Well, it's really simple. The floors were concrete reinforced by trusses, and the floors and trusses were attached to the walls. So once the floor started to freaking collapse, it would completely pull the walls in. And if you watch the first tower collapse from very close up, you actually see that happen. You actually see the hole and the wall starting to pull itself in on itself. And that's how it collapsed. Again, I'm no expert, and if you want to call BS and blah, 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 fine, but I'm just telling you from what I've learned and what I saw. Now, the North Tower was a little bit different because it was such a high impact point, but what destroyed the building? It's really simple. The roof. The tower began to collapse at impact point, and unlike the South Tower, it collapsed straight down on itself, but the roof weighed more than frickin' 10 floors. It weighed so much that it just completely collapsed the entire building. And every subsequent floor that it smashed into, it just completely obliterated the trusses, and the trusses just pulled the walls out from themselves, and it completely pulverized the entire building. Now again, if you want to show me something, this is scientific footage proven otherwise, that's fine. But from what I can tell, with the way the building was constructed, it was constructed kind of like a dome. Solid while whole. But if you punch a hole into a dome, the entire structure becomes weak. And again, that's basically my thing about that. Now, again, here's the other point I'm trying to make. And I want to make this point. Now, I'll move back to the conspiracy theory, flat Earth thing. Um, if if you put charges in that building and you wanted to destroy it, and the planes were crashing into the building was just a smoke screen, man, those planes would have to crash very precise for them to be completely collapsed at both impact points. And again, I'm not saying this is the absolute truth and I know all this stuff. I'm just saying those planes would have had to precisely hit the towers. You know what I mean? And you're telling me in 2001 they had the same technology then that they used for drones, but to control an airplane? I seriously doubt it. Or, if there were people on there, whatever, they are not. I mean, if you're saying that it was that, But I'm just saying this. Now, of course, there are some people out there that say there was never any planes and it was just a flat out explosion and the planes were some CG recreation or whatever. I don't know about that one, man, because there was still there was those firefighters that were hanging out doing that documentary and they looked up and saw a plane and heard a plane and the plane crashed right into the building. You know what I mean? But again, whatever. If you think I'm wrong, you think I'm crazy, fine. Chuck it in the bucket, man. That's what the comment section's for. If you just think, okay, I see your opinion, and I disagree with you anyway, okay, that's fine too. You know what I mean? I won't patronize you by saying we agree to disagree. I'll just say, nah. Okay, so that's fine. Um, so anyway, moving back to the flat Earth thing, and there's a reason why I'm bringing all these things up is because it kind of comes full circle, even to the intro stuff I was talking about, the flat Earth thing. Um, I'm no gravity expert. I'm really not, okay? But there have been a couple of questions that have been asked on the flat Earth thing that kind of made me go, huh. It doesn't prove anything, but it made me scratch my head. And one of the things that is always explained or is always brought up is air flight, okay? When you are flying a plane, and again, if you're a freaking airline pilot, maybe you can freaking, or some kind of pilot, you can tell me, yeah, you're stupid, and let me tell you, but I'm just saying what I learned. This guy, Eric Dubay, he's the one that said this, okay? Um, when you're flying an airplane across the world, if the world is a globe, then you would have to constantly course correct down to account for because you're going straight, right? Like, okay, what I mean is, if you're going straight and you're flying, eventually you're going to start to ascend because the planet's going to curve downward. So the plane should start to go, like, basically what I'm saying is the plane should start to notice that now it's ascending and wants you to, hey, compensate, you know what I mean? But it doesn't happen. Apparently gravity locks an airplane into place and pulls its gravitational pull pulls it to where it's like, yeah, you're in the air, but I'm keeping you leveled, which I'm kind of funny about that. Now you could say, oh well, yeah, it's in the air, but its gravitational pull is still gripping it or whatever. All right, but what about a submarine? A submarine doesn't have the weight of gravity pulling it the same way a plane does. It's in the buoyant water. You know what I mean? Now I know a submarine sucks in water to add more weight and then submerge, but I'm just saying, like, look, say it's submerged slightly, right? Periscope depth as they will, or maybe a little low, and it's sailing across the Atlantic. Wouldn't the submarine eventually surface? If it's holding steady and going straight, wouldn't it just eventually surface because the Earth is curved and it's gonna eventually just have you surface. Eventually, you're just gonna be facing sort of upward. You know what I mean? But again, maybe gravity holds that thing in place and keeps it from doing that. Um, but it just still makes you wonder. You know what I mean? And according to Eric Dubay, a lot of photos that they've taken of space that are around since the 60s didn't surface till the 90s. Now, I know my mom would say, oh, well, yeah, that's because the government kept that from people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait, so you're saying the government kept this from people so they wouldn't freak out or, whatever, some kind of conspiracy. But you're saying there is no government conspiracy of, hiding, the world, like what, if it's flat or not. And Eric Dubay said straight out, he said, why would you do this? What's people ask, why would you do this? And he said it's very simple. It's to start the biggest non-question religion ever. You know what I mean? The science religion, if you will. And again, you could completely disagree with that. You could say you're crazy, you're out of your mind. I'm not saying it's true what he's saying. I'm just saying you got a point. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you look, ultimately, no matter what century you're in, no matter what decade, whoever's the government, whoever's in charge, whoever's the monarchy, whoever's the king and queen, whoever's whatever, the emperor, whatever, your natural instinct as the leaders is to control the population and to control the population's, the way of thinking. I don't understand the logic behind it per se. I don't, but I think the logic is this. You have to control the population, otherwise you lose your control of them. You know what I mean? You have to make sure your population believes what you want them to believe, because if you don't, then you lose your control of them. And it's like, if you think about it that way, you know what I mean? You go, well, look, I mean, there's kings and queens and people in charge for centuries and centuries. Why would it be so hard to believe that somebody could still be doing that now, and maybe this sort of organization has been around for 100 or 200 years? Why is that so absurd? If countries exist for hundreds and thousands of years, then why wouldn't, well, not hundreds of thousands, but 100 years or even 1,000 years, why is it so absurd to think that something like this would stick around for a very long time? I mean, look, I'll put it this way. If you worked really hard in your life and you wanted your kids to live the riches you have, like say you got rich, and you want your kids and grandkids and their grandkids to continue this, why wouldn't you try to keep, the regular person spending money on you, buying your products, buying whatever it is you need, and doing all this stuff, and convincing them that, like, look, what we think is the truth and what they think should be ridiculed and laughed at, and keep buying our stuff, keep voting us in, keep whatever, because they're absurd. They don't know the science. We know the science. They don't know what's real and what's not. We know what's real and what's not, and only us can say what's real and what's not. And some people are just like, okay, they just cannot let go of what they believe in. It's like, no, I cannot let go of this. And to some extent, that's human nature. I mean, like, it's like if you, I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I've got my, religious beliefs and things like that, my, spiritual side. But if I believed in something like that wholeheartedly, and someone shows me proof that there's no God, for example, I'm not going to believe it, because that's where I'm at. I'm hardened in this belief. And that's okay too. It's part of being human. It's like, yo, this is what you believe, and that's that. And it's like, okay. Because, I mean, that's what makes it really crazy. Because it's like, look, what if the earth is flat? Like, again, let's just humor this for a second. What if the earth is flat and it's not what we all thought it taught in school what it was, and there's some super conspiracy going on? Well, if you don't believe this, then you're not going to care if someone proves it or not. That's just human nature. You know what I mean? So if you think about it this way, whatever the truth is or not, whoever's in charge needs to keep people believing things a certain way, whether it's real or not. Because if you don't, then people are just kind of, well, I think that's just anarchy right there. If everybody has their own beliefs and everybody has, I'm this and I'm that, and there you go. But if you keep it structured, then you have more of a control on your society. But again, I'm saying, look again, hypothetically, what if the world is flat and everybody wants to believe it's round? Well, then it's round. That's just how it works. Look, I said this to a friend of mine before I recorded today, and I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, look, man, I can't prove the world is round, but I can't prove it's flat either. And I can't prove the world isn't flat, and I can't prove the world isn't round either. So ultimately, of this conversation we're talking, it's a moot point, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, look. Imagine I believed the world was round, or sorry, the world was flat, right? well, I'm still gonna go to work tomorrow. I'm still gonna pay my bills. I'm still gonna drive to my mom's to check on her. I'm still gonna blah, 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 all that stuff. What if I believed the world was round? I'm still gonna go to work tomorrow. I'm still gonna freaking pay my bills. I'm still gonna go check on my mom. I'm still gonna go feed the dog. I don't have a dog, but I'm just saying. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is why I don't like the idea of dismissing people in sort of that type of belief, because and for all intents and purposes, here we are. We're living in a time where men can say they're women, and we are not dismissing them. We are saying you are a woman, and that's that. But if anybody says the world is flat, it's like, what? You're insane. The science says otherwise. Well, doesn't the science say a man has a penis and testicles and a body full of testosterone and facial hair and women can have facial hair too, but you see what I'm saying? And doesn't the science say that a woman has swollen breasts for holding milk and feeding a child, and a vagina and a uterus to take in fertilization and create a child? Doesn't the science say that too? No, you say it doesn't say it. La 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 la. I'm not listening. La la la. You see what I'm saying? And if you believe that too, this just furthers my point. If you believe that, guess what? You have every right to believe it. If you say you're insane, Evan, and that the science does not say that, and men are women and women are men and blah 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 and all that stuff, then you have every right to believe that too. You really do. Again, I'm not sitting here saying, no, you must believe what I believe. No. You know what I mean? Anybody has every right to believe whatever the hell they want to believe. And these things go toe and toe together. Just like the intro, I started it with the battered wife that wants to believe that her husband's a great guy, and her brother who loves her and cares about her and sees her with black eye, is she wants to believe that her brother's the real villain and her husband is the hero, then she has every right to believe that, as horrible as that sounds. It is horrible. But this is the thing that the left and the right and the middle and the top and the bottom and everybody out there doesn't seem to understand. Regardless if you're, very conservative, or regardless, there's a certain point where you say, yeah, they're crazy, but they have every right to be. And my enemy believes I'm crazy, or my political opinion rivals. Your political opinion rivals will kneel at your feet, and you will but kneel at mine. If anybody can write who I just said in the chat, that'd be who I just quoted in the chat. That'd be great. Who that was. But you see what I'm saying? Even the most absurd of the absurd. Most absurd of absurd. Those people have every right to believe that, and those people see you as the absurd of the absurd. There was a Dr. Seuss book. I think it was it the Sneetches? I think it was the Sneetches. Jesus, now I wish I had my phone on me. It's in the back charging. I believe it was the Sneetches, but I'm willing to correct it if I'm wrong. But it was these people. There were Sneetches, and there were Sneetches that lived on this side of the fence, and there were Sneetches that lived on the other side of the fence. And one group of Sneetches put butter on top of their toast. Guess what? The other ones put butter at the bottom of their toast. One time, two Sneetches approached the wall and talked to each other and said, "We like toast at the top." And that Sneetch said, "Nah, fuck you guys, you're crazy. We like toast at the bottom." Not literally. And they got mad at each other, and they got annoyed. And each Sneetch came back with a stronger weapon to combat the other Sneetch for being absolutely insane and absurd, and to the point where the weapons just got larger and larger and larger and larger and larger, and then I think they blew up everything. You know what I mean? A lot of the Sneetches went underground to hide from everything. But the point was, they destroyed everything for something as simple as where you put butter. The Sneetches who put butter at the bottom were just as valid as the people who put butter at the top. It didn't matter, because ultimately what it should have been was, all right, you do that, we do that. Some people like turkey, some people like ham. What do you want? You know what I mean? And this is probably the most maddening thing about this way of thinking, is that you can be told, dude, no, like basically the Sneetch attacked the other Sneetch and said, "I'm going to hurt you because you You are hurting the world by putting butter underneath the toast. It's like they're accusing each other of of causing harm, and the solution to causing harm is by harming each other. You know what I mean? I want to tell this story really quick. I don't mean to get off topic, but this kind of makes me think of. I knew this girl. She was in her 20s, and she was a friend of mine, and she was real cool. But man, I tell you, this girl could not live her life without her parents' rule, if you will. And what's funny about her is that she's a good girl, smart, but not even so much her parents, it was really her mother. And her mother was like the Rapunzel mom. Mother knows best. I mean, it was like every single action she took in her life had to be validated by her mother. And her mother would tell her who to talk to, who not to talk to, who whatever, all this stuff. And again, this girl was in her 20s, for God's sake. It wasn't like she was 8. You know what I mean? And I would tell this girl, I'd be like, listen, you're getting to a point in your life where you need to start growing up, because it's like, God, like you don't, you literally do every single action in your life. You run it through your mom. And it's funny because she started to get angry at me about that. And I would tell her, I go, listen, if we're going to be friends, if we're going to be cool and you're going to come to me for sort of like advice and things like that, I'm going to tell you what I tell you. Then it got to a point where she was mad and she didn't want to talk to me. And then I spoke to her again or something like that. And long story short, she told her mom about something. And her mom was like, okay, well, you got to do this, this, and that. And you have to listen to this and listen to that. Hell, even her mom told her not to talk to me because she was like, oh, he's just going to confuse you. He's going to confuse you. He's going to confuse you. He's trying to dictate your actions. He's trying to dictate your actions. But I want to make this point. One of the last times I spoke to this girl, I spoke to her and she told me something. Oh, I did this and my mom said I should do this and that and whatever. And I told her, I said, well, listen, I wouldn't have told you that if I was your mom. But if that's how you want to live your life, that's how you go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Do you know what her final response was to me? Screw you. You're toxic. You just want to control my life and get the fuck out of my life. Blocked, gone. That's it. No talking to her no more. I want everybody to really think about what just was said. This young woman in her 20s told me that her mom says you need to do this, this, and that. You need to speak to these people and you not speak to these people. And when she told me, my mom says I should do this, this, and that, and this is okay, and whatever. And I said, well, I wouldn't tell you that if I were her. But if that's how you want to live, if that's how you want to do things, it's your life. Keep in mind what I just said. Her mother tells her all the time what to do and tells her and validates every decision she makes or invalidates it. And when she talks to me, she's like, I'm like, oh, well, do what you want to do. And she's angry about that. Who's really trying to control who? Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's really interesting. This falls back onto every single thing I brought up since the start of this podcast. From the sister that doesn't believe the brother, that she's being beat by her husband. Not believe, but she wants to drown it out and say it's not my husband's fault. It's your fault, and you're the bad person. To the different beliefs of 9/11, to the different beliefs of the flat earth, and to the belief of who's actually trying to control you, all that stuff. With it all said, if you agree on one side or disagree, the point is still there, what I've been saying from the beginning. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do. If that person wants to believe that, then that is their truth. And that's that. That's their reality. That's their whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like I knew somebody who told me one time, oh, well, when you're drunk, what you do when you're drunk isn't your fault because, you were drunk. And I remember my response to that was, if what you do when you're drunk isn't your fault, and you know this, and you could harm somebody, then you should never get drunk. You know what I mean? And even then, even if it's what you do is not you do is because it's not your fault because you don't realize what's going on when you're drunk, then you shouldn't get drunk. But again, those two belief systems, I know it's absurd what I just said, but it's still what people want to believe, and that's that. That's all it boils down to. None of it matters. Nothing we say or do matters, because the truth is, regardless, if you could slap it right in somebody's face and be like, look, this is what it is. It doesn't matter to that person, because they're gonna believe what they want to believe. Because at the end of the day, whether we have a soul or not, you are going to believe that your soul needs something, needs this, and needs to retract that, and needs to destroy this, and needs to whatever. I'm not a nihilist or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, how often are arguments and disagreements settled by going separate ways? And this is also what brings up another factor about even living in America. Oh, it's a melting pot, so many different things. Isn't that kind of a bad thing? Shouldn't we all be structured by one way of, not one way of thinking, but sort of one general like philosophy or whatever? Because if we're all have different, thoughts and opinions, not thoughts and opinions. See, again, that doesn't sound right. What I'm saying is we should all follow sort of a standard of living when we live in a country or whatever. Maybe here in America we do. We all sit and watch Netflix. We all order pizza. We all freaking binge watch the HBO Max or whatever. We all work our jobs and go home from our jobs and pay our car note and whatever. So maybe that is freedom. The freedom to believe what you want and live in your home and pay your bills and, whatever the case is. I think ultimately none of it matters, because as long as you're not harming anybody else, it doesn't matter. But I think, what's really frustrating is that when somebody outright accuses you of what somebody else is doing, or somebody outright accuses you of what they're doing, it's really tough, man. It's really, really tough, because sometimes it's people that you give a damn about. Sometimes it's people that I don't know. I think ultimately what it all comes down to is, once that happens, you're just supposed to not have that person in your life anymore. And it's weird, man, because in the movies, the person that's trying to help is the one that ultimately will help that person, and then it'll be all taken care of. But it doesn't work like that in real life. It really doesn't. I don't think it ever will. I think ultimately, if if it looks like the earth is flat and people want to believe that the world is round, and the world is going to be round, you know what I mean? And if that girl getting beat at her husband wants to believe that what she wants to believe, and she doesn't want to believe, if that's what makes her happy, it's all that matters. And that friend of mine I mentioned, used to really like give her a lot of advice and tell her this and that, this and that. But if it makes her happy to believe that I'm the one that's doing all this horrible stuff to her, I'm trying to control her, and my mother knows best, and blah blah blah, well then there you go. That's all it comes down to. You know what I mean? That's it. It's all that matters. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter either way. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. It's just, okay, you just gotta step back and walk away and not converse with that person. I mean, I know sometimes people are young and they learn later. But it doesn't matter if they learn later, because that person later is a different person than you are today. You know what I mean? And it's like, it really, it's a little disheartening when you just, when you just want to be like, if only you could see this, you would, you would realize that, you're accusing the person of, and again, I know the conspiracy theory ones don't really coincide with this as well. But if you get angry at those other people that believe you and stuff, if you accuse somebody of, you did this, like, I don't know, man. I think ultimately what I'm getting at is, life is not as like black and white as it seems. It's very gray. Everything is uncertain. Everything is sure, but, you know what I mean? That's the answer to everything. Yeah, you could, but, you know what I mean? I think that film and television, as cool as this stuff is, I think it's really brought an unrealistic standard to um, where what actually happens in life. You know what I mean? You know, you kind of sit there and say, "Oh, what did he say on high fidelity? What does it all mean? What did they say? What does it all mean?" You know what I mean? Well, the truth is, it means nothing. But high fidelity is a really interesting example because this is a story about a man who was like, pissed and depressed over losing his girlfriend to somebody else, and the movie ends with him getting back with her. And that's another thing. Everybody out there who's wanted their ex back or whatever for whatever reason, everybody will tell them no. And that's those everybody like a friend of mine said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Oh my God, don't do that. But guess what? That same person that tells you no is going to be back with their ex at some point, or was back with their ex at some point. So what is it, man? What are we supposed to do in this world? How are we supposed to live the right way if people are accusing you of something when it's somebody else who's doing it? You know, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Your husband's beating you. Oh, you're horrible toward me, and he's a wonderful man, and blah blah, and all that stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know, and I think ultimately that's the point of this type of discussion. Like again, if I can prove the world's flat, and it turns out 90% of the world says no, it's round, does it matter? You know what I mean? Again. Well, I guess ultimately with the flat Earth thing, or the 9/11 thing, or proving to somebody that your husband is beating you, if they still don't want to believe it, it doesn't matter. Either side, either side. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. If they don't want to believe it, then they don't want to believe it, and that's it. You know, but it's just one of those things where you just have to go, okay, you know what I mean? Like whatever makes you happy. And you know what? I think I'm probably going to end this podcast there. Just tell me what you think, man. Throw comments in the questions, comments, whatever, and chuck it in the bucket. You know, that's what I like to call the comments. Another YouTuber said that years ago. He was like, just chuck it in the bucket. He would say, yeah, throw some comments in there. Say whatever you think. Say whatever. You know what I mean? You have a discussion like this, talk about it. Yeah, so I'll be putting this one up soon. So if you guys give a listen, if you hear this on YouTube or you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a like, subscribe. Please comment all you want. Like and subscribe. That's just what I'm going to be saying on all these things. Thank you very much. Kira Lights.